because our deepest wounds often reveal our greatest purpose. Welcome to the Court of Connection. It is your host, Danielle Cobb, and I am so pumped for this episode today because it has been a large part of my journey for the last, probably year and a half at this point. I've really stepped into it towards the end of last year, and the episode is on trusting inner authority over external outside authority. And to give a little bit of context, I been in recovery for almost 11 years. And for those of you that are in recovery, you understand when you get sober, my best thinking is not very reliable, right? And so I get a mentor, I get a sponsor, they kind of guide the way. I take suggestions from other people. And what happened over time was this part was created where it was like, you can't trust yourself. You must ask, seek approval, get assurance from other people before you can trust yourself, which I want to say had a place and a time and was really beneficial, especially in the beginning when I needed some guardrails, when I needed direction, when my life had looked like a shithole and a burning, like walking out of a burning building all of the time into a life where I could start to really trust myself, where the inner voice inside was getting louder and louder, where I didn't necessarily need to be asking a bunch of opinions of other people all the time. The voice was loud. I just had to learn how to trust it. And so this past year, I made a big decision to leave my job, which I'll talk a little bit more about, which really led to this snowball effect of leaning into inner authority in a way that I never had before, because it was always seeking outside approval first. And that didn't just start in recovery. Like, that was my experience for a very long time, since I was a little girl. I did not trust myself. It ended me up in relationships with men that were, abusive on some levels, sticking around in friendships and, in jobs and things like that for much longer than I wanted to be there, because I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust myself enough to make the move and know that I would be okay on the other side. So let's get into it. There was a moment last year where I could feel it so clearly in my body. This quiet, steady knowing that something in my life was complete. And right on its heels came the noise, only briefly. Maybe wait a little longer. What if you regret this? What will people think? And I did what I had always done. I started looking outside of myself for reassurance, trying to make the decision make sense, trying to get it right, trying to get ahead of everything. But the truth was, I already knew. It just didn't come with a presentation. It didn't come with everyone else's approval. Just a calm, grounded, this is done. And choosing to trust that without over-explaining it, without rushing to justify it, without needing everyone to understand, was one of the hardest freeing things I've ever done up until that moment. And I think for most of my life. I thought I needed more opinions, more clarity, more time. But what I actually needed was a willingness to trust the voice that never leaves me. The one that doesn't argue, doesn't panic, doesn't perform, just knows. And I'm learning and honoring that voice. It will cost you the approval of some people, but it will give you your life back. And, some people refer to this voice as intuition. Some people refer to this voice as the Holy Spirit. Some people refer to this voice as an inner knowing. What I know about it today is that it is a still, quiet voice that is very straightforward. And it speaks in very short sentences like, it's time to go. Make the jump. Take a right. And as I've mentioned before, the chaotic part is when fear comes in, right? Outside noise comes in. And I start to question my decision. I start to question the inner voice inside that is infinitely intelligent, that already knows I'm going to be taken care of on the other side, right? And so, what the outside noise actually looks like is needing to ask multiple people before making a decision. I cannot tell you the number of times that I would call 4 different people in one day with the same thing, just begging for somebody to reassure the decision that nobody was capable of doing. Like, we all come to the table with our own fear. We see through the lens of our own life experience and our own failures, our own successes. And every single time I picked up the phone, somebody else's answer was different. And then I would be left with more confusion, right? Just frustration, and why is nobody saying what I need them to say? And the truth is I didn't need them to. I just needed to trust that the voice was right. And the voice doesn't make sense all the time. And that's the hard part. And oftentimes on the other side of the voice is asking you to do something that other people might think is absolutely crazy, or that they would never do because it's too risky, or you're walking away from the safe option. Why would you do that? Right? We live in a world where we're conditioned to believe that the safe thing is to do what conditioning tells us to do. Stay in the 9 to 5, stay in the safe relationship, make all of these decisions that make sense, that will keep you safe. Don't take a risk. And so asking multiple people before making a decision was a huge safety strategy for me that never worked. Wanting the reassurance before acting, right? Asking people, does this make sense? What do you think? Would you do it? Over explaining my choices so they made sense to other people. This was a big, big, big one whenever I made the decision to leave my 9 to 5 job. And, I'm on this like crazy, spiritual high because I got this download that was clear as day, felt grounding, felt so true for me. And I remember having a couple of conversations where, one being to my dad, which of course my dad's going to have something to say, right? He's my dad. He wants to make sure that I'm safe. And also, he's never left his 9 to 5 job. He's a man who is structured financially. He is safe. He is what most people on this planet are. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But in that space of feeling flow and inspiration, I reach out and I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this thing. And he's like, well, you have to pay rent and pay our car payment, all that. And I'm like, immediately start to shrink, right? And immediately start to question my decision. Of course, right? Because those are things that are already brewing underneath the surface, right? Am I going to make it? Is it going to be okay? Am I going to fail, right? All of the human things. And then coupled with, I want people to trust my decision, right? I place so much security in other people and what they think about my decisions for me to be okay. And, there were a couple of other outside conversations where people were coming from their own fear place of logic. And it really took, and this is where nervous system work comes in, right? You can't just think your way out of it. I have to learn how to hold myself in that, right? So when my dad is saying all this and all of my stuff is coming to the surface, all the fears, all the doubt, all the things, I have to come back to stillness, come back to regulation, and then I have to come back to alignment and inner knowing and any inner truth, and remind myself that this is coming from divine, that this is not coming from some fluke deal, that I trust this thing that is happening, even though I can't see it yet. And so, yeah, that leads into just letting everyone else's fear override your own knowing. I mean, how many people do that, right? How many people feel inspired by something and then start to share it with people and then talk themselves out of it? I had a call with somebody that I mentor the other day, and, she's in this space of flow and alignment and, seeing the magic and all these really cool things are happening. And she's so excited she's doing what I did, right? She's telling her parents, she's telling all these people, and the voices start to come in. And so I just very lovingly told her, I'm like, this is just an invitation. Like, this is totally your journey. And I get wanting to share this excitement with people, but I would encourage you to maybe be selective about who you share it with, only because my experience shows that it's really easy to get knocked off of that place of the inner knowing when it's a new muscle that you're starting to trust, right? And so those are just some of the ways that the outside noise shows up, right? Everybody has their own opinions and conditioning. And the truth is if you would have asked me, like if a friend would have come to me 2 years ago, 3 years ago and said, yeah, like I'm doing this thing, I'm quitting my job, I don't really have a plan yet. And God told me, I would be like, oh shit, only because there was a part of me that would be afraid to do that, but wants to do it. But also like, I've never done anything like that before, right? There's no guarantee on the other side of that. And so, these are some of the things that I had to work through making this decision and coming back home to myself, which in turn just created a deeper sense of trusting in the inner guidance system, which was such a beautiful experience. And here's the truth. I still don't have it figured out, but my relationship with myself has changed so much. Like, I can't even tell you. My relationship with the unknown is something that I never thought was possible. I still, to date, in this moment, don't have it figured out. I know what I'm supposed to do next. I know what steps I'm taking, but I don't really have it figured out yet. But I'm okay with that. I genuinely feel a sense of peace and ease, and I know that I am divinely guided and protected. I know without a shadow of a doubt that the download that I got was absolutely what I was supposed to do. Therefore, whatever's next will unfold and I will be taken care of. And that whole concept was crazy to me before. I was like, how do people do that? Actually recorded with my sponsor she was my very first episode. And I remember I was already on this journey. I was having this spiritual awakening at the time. And this was before my decision to leave, a few months before, actually, maybe 2. And she's sitting there and she's talking about her relationship with the unknown and how it is so exciting. And she is so enthralled by this journey of the unknown and not needing to know anything about anything that is next. And there was a part of me that was like, yeah, that's amazing. And then there was another part of me that was like, what's that like? And in a moment, it can change. In a moment, you can understand what that's like, but it requires you to step out in faith. It requires you to step out without it being figured out. And that is terrifying. So I want to talk a little bit about the cost of not trusting yourself. So when you don't trust your inner authority, you start outsourcing your life, right? And for me, that didn't look obvious. It looked responsible, like I mentioned, right? All of these people are doing the responsible thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It looked thoughtful. It looked like leadership. At the time, I was in a role where people came to me for answers. I was the director. I made the decisions, the one who could hold complexity, move things forward, lead a team. But behind the scenes, especially in the beginning, I was still asking, not always out loud, but internally, is this the right move? How is this going to land? Am I missing something? What would they think about this decision? What if I say this out loud and it's rejected, right? Just constantly questioning, even when I knew, oh my gosh, I look back on all of these moments in my life where I've always had a deep, deep inner knowing. Like I knew things I should know, but I didn't quite trust it. And then they would happen and I would be like, I knew that was going to happen. Like, it's crazy. And so I would know, right? I would know that I was doing the right thing. And I would override it with logic, with strategy, with people's perspectives. And that started to show up everywhere in my life, really loud. And it was getting loud because it was time to leave it behind. It was time to leave that pattern behind. It had always been there, but it just got so loud. And, in my career, staying in something longer than my body felt aligned with started to feel like an internal death. And it made sense on paper, and I was good at it, and it was stable, and I made decent money for a single person, and I got to live a comfortable life, you know? Um, and then in relationships, feeling like something just wasn't quite right, but trying to understand it, talk it through, work it into alignment, override my system instead of just honoring the initial truth. And I think the hardest part was from the outside, it looked all right, you know, but on the inside, there was this subtle, constant disconnect. Like it was slightly off from myself. And it was just those little micro moments of contorting and shrinking and erasing myself. And that's the cost that no one talks about. It's not always dramatic. It wasn't dramatic in my life. My life looked amazing from the outside. It just did. I lived a life a lot of people wanted to live. And sometimes it's just living a life that looks good but doesn't fully feel like yours. And to me, that is the low buzzing pain that I never want to experience again. I will never experience that again. And you can feel it on a cellular level. The moment you say yes and something in your body goes quiet, the moment when you stay and a part of you knows that you're past your truth, the moment when you explain your decision and you can feel you're trying to convince yourself to. Ugh, that is the cost. It's the subtle self-abandonment over and over and over again. So, just to weave in a few of the examples, so leaving my job, shifting identities, I stepped away from part of a community that I was very involved in for a long time. And that was one of those things where it was like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but I'm feeling called over here. And so I listened. Navigating relationships differently, letting things fall away that didn't align. That's the hard thing because the mind wants to grasp and hold on to these familiar things rather than letting them fall away because we assign this meaning to it, right? Well, and I also don't believe that I'm going to be okay without these certain relationships or this certain experience or, I just can't trust the unknown. And so all of these moments led to this stepping into full trust of the inner authority. And ever since then, I have continued to make decisions that oftentimes did not make sense to the outside world, but I have not questioned it once. Not one of them. Not one of them. And inner authority feels like calm. It's just calm. I've spent the last several months just in this place of rest and receive, knowing that I'm going to take action soon in this business, but also just being okay and trusting that right now this is what it looks like. And I don't need to panic and I don't need to rush into making anything happen. I don't need to do that. My system tells me when it's time to move. And it's just simple. It doesn't argue. It doesn't rush. It's not chaotic. It's not convincing. I'm not looping. And that's one of the biggest signs for me is when I start to loop and I'm just stuck on this loop, I am in the mind. I am not in the inner knowing. I'm in the outside. I'm thinking about, what I need to make happen, or I'm questioning my timing, or I'm, worried about how it looks to someone else, or, are they going to think I'm fucking lazy and I'm not doing anything? Whatever the story is. And I think about this experience I had recently where, I met this person and I had just come off of these two kind of back-to-back experiences where relationships were not in alignment. And I trusted that inner voice and I trusted that knowing. And I, handled these with dignity and chose myself. I was like, no, Like, this is a full body no. And then, I see a friend at this event, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And we start interacting, and there's just something in me, the inner knowing, that I'm like, huh, what is this? What is this here? And there were some circumstances that I'm not going to get into, some details about the situation that raised some concern for me from the, outside perspective viewpoint, right? Meaning, what are other people going to think? And we had this experience, and I started to step into that place of questioning myself, right? The outside voices got really loud, and I went into management mode, right? I went into, how can I make sure I'm doing the right thing so that I'm perceived the right way by all these other people, even though internally I'm having this experience that feels like full alignment. And so this is what happens. I go into, okay, this is my strategy. This is my way to completely control the situation. So I tell him, look, I respect you. I care about you. I am definitely feeling chemistry. And, because of XYZ, I may pull back, and, I want you to know it's not about disinterest. Do you hear the amount of management that is happening here? Out of literal fear of what other people are going to think about this experience. And, ultimately I decided to hang out with him and, just see how it went, and just one-on-one with him. And we have this insane day, just like insane. One of those days where it's just total alignment everywhere we went, every conversation with every single person that we met, like just full alignment. My body is a full body yes. I am so grounded. I am so anchored in my own inner authority. I am so present in this experience with this man. And I remember sitting there and thinking, holy shit, I think this person might be it for me. And this is one of those moments where it's like, from the outside world, that might be a absolute insane concept. Like, you literally, yeah, you were friends with this person, but you literally hung out with him twice. And and it was just like this beautiful experience. It was this beautiful, like, recognition of, like, I can trust myself today. This is not override. This is alignment. This is what it feels like to move despite what other people might think, to listen to what the voice is telling you, which is saying, move forward. It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. What is true for you? What is true for you? Because I don't know about you, but I spent my entire life contorting and living a life that was like half mine. And I told myself when I left this job and I stepped into this higher timeline, that I was never going to do that again. That I was never going to rob myself of the life that was always meant to be mine. That I was never going to shrink myself, erase myself, contort myself, make decisions based on what you think is best for my life. I'm the only one that goes to sleep with myself every single night. I'm the only person that will be with me for the rest of my life. Why am I making decisions for you, to impress you? Done with that. I get so pumped up about that because that is what I'm teaching other people today. That is what I get to mentor and coach other people today on. What would life look like if you stopped self-abandoning? What would life look like if you showed up in every room exactly as you are and didn't worry about who liked it or not? What would it be like to step in every room and wear exactly what you want and not give a flying fuck? What would that be like? How might your life change? What might it look like to say the thing that's might offend people. What would it look like to live in total alignment in your life? I'll tell you what it's felt like for me. What it's given me in this short amount of time is I don't have this incessant need to chase anything that feels good. In fact, I find so much pleasure in the mundane today. Like being out on a walk and seeing a really beautiful tree, or sitting on my patio every morning and watching the squirrels and the birds and all these creatures on my patio eating bird food. Like I was so asleep in my own life, driven by fear, driven by, and I'm not saying I don't experience fear today. I'm human. I'm never going to be void of that. But I was living a life that wasn't mine, and therefore just like had this heavy veil over me, asleep to all of the beauty that is. And I still hear the outside noise, but it doesn't lead my life anymore. It just doesn't. You can listen without abandoning yourself. You can take input from other people without losing your center. I don't walk around just closed off to what other people have to say. I'm open to feedback. That's the beautiful thing. I welcome it. But what I'm not going to do is attach myself to it. I'm going to take what feels aligned and I'm going to politely leave what doesn't. I don't need to tell you I'm doing that. It's called moving with authority. Moving with self-leadership. You can move without explaining everything. Like some people come to me, they're like, what should I say to this person? And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And they're like, oh, that's mean. And I'm like, I get it, but it's not. It's honest. It's honest. I don't want to do anything I don't want to do anymore. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And the beautiful thing is that on this journey, it's not going to look perfect. It definitely hasn't looked perfect for me. There are still moments where, and maybe in the moment I did agree to it because it sounded like a good idea. And then as I got closer to it, I'm like, it doesn't really feel aligned to me anymore. And so do you know what I do? Hey, girlfriend, I'm actually feeling like this isn't aligning anymore. So I won't be there on Wednesday. I did that the other day. It's like, who am I? I don't know, but I'm not somebody going to live anybody else's life anymore. It is the most beautiful and empowering thing to be able to move in the world and trust yourself and not need to call 50 people to make a decision anymore. And to feel like by listening to that voice that I'm making moves quicker and quicker that put me into alignment, that put me on my highest timeline. You don't need more clarity. You don't need more time. You don't need one more opinion. You need to get quiet enough to hear what's already there. The voice that you've been looking for is the one that's been with you the entire time. Trust it. Listen to it. Believe in it. Move with it. You will always be taken care of. Thank you for tuning in. I have some exciting stuff coming soon. I think I mentioned on one of my last ones, I am rebranding soon. I will be launching an offer soon for coaching. So stay tuned. I'm super excited to share that with you guys and would love to take any of you along on the ride who's ready to step into full alignment. All right, guys, until next time, may the cord that binds us to one another and to Source remind you that you are never alone, always guided, and always home.